Hello, how is everyone? Y'all hear me okay? Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I'm excited to be with you all today. And yes, we are going to be talking about how to prevent burnout before it happens, which I'm sure is everybody's favorite topic, right? So it is my intention that by the end of our time together, you not only will have a better understanding of how your emotions impact your behavior and the behavior of others in not so positive ways sometimes, and also will have the tools that you can use to manage stress and other negative emotions in the moment that can impact your productivity, your health and well-being, your cognitive ability. So that's what we're going to talk about today. As Nicole had mentioned, I spent 26 years in the corporate retail sector, and I reached burnout. And I equate that to slamming into a cement wall at full speed. I was done. I had no more mental bandwidth to continue in my existing situation. I was 65 pounds overweight. I was suffering from chronic migraines, digestive issues. My marriage was strained. And I remember waking up one morning and the world just looked gray, devoid of color. And it freaked me out. And I had a conversation with my husband, and he said, I don't care what you do, but you have got to get out of that job. He said, I love you, but I don't like being around you. You're a nightmare. And I know that sounds really harsh, but I am so thankful he said that, because I was a nightmare to be around. I was that person that we're going to talk more about during the presentation that just is so negative all the time, is so miserable. And that's not who I am. So in a moment of desperation, I quit a long-term career at a high salary without an exit strategy, which led to bankruptcy down the road. I share all this with you to say, had I done a better job managing my stress, I could have prevented all of it. Because stress and burnout is preventable, but I allowed myself to get to such a bad place. So I don't know where you are in your life. Hopefully you're nowhere near where I was. But if you're starting to exhibit any kind of warning signs like tension headaches, maybe indigestion, maybe you can't sleep, you wake up in the middle of the night and your brain is just going, those are warning signs, and you need to listen to it, because if you don't, you could end up like me or worse. So enough about that. Let's talk about mental fitness. So, anybody have an idea what mental fitness is? Have you heard about it? No? Oh, this is going to be fun. All right, so mental fitness, by definition, is your capacity to respond to life's challenges with a positive versus a negative mindset. And the impact of this is peak performance. You're highly productive. You have peace of mind because you're calm. You have laser focus. You have greater health and well-being. And you have healthier relationships. All things that we strive to want or have. So mental fitness was created by Shirzad Chamine. I know it's a mouthful. So he founded Positive Intelligence Mental Fitness. Shirzad is a PhD. He teaches Stanford students, and he did extensive research that involved positive psychology, performance science, neuroscience, and cognitive behavioral psychology. And at the core is positive intelligence. Now, his research, just so you know that he's legit, is hundreds of CEOs and their executive teams, Stanford students, world-class athletes, over 500,000 participants from 50 different countries, and many YPO families and forums. Now, if you enjoy reading or listening to audiobooks, I highly recommend his book entitled Positive Intelligence, which takes a deep dive into what we're talking about today. And you'll gain so much insight into your behavior and how it's influencing your life in not so positive ways. All right, so the results. there are 3 core muscles at the root of mental fitness. We have the saboteur interceptor, we have the sage, and we have the self-command. And we're going to talk about each of these in detail. So to really understand how positive intelligence mental fitness works, we need to understand our brains. Now we have 2 sides of our brain. We have our left analytical side of our brain, which was designed for problem solving, one task at a time. Where we get into trouble is when we try to multitask. Any multitaskers out there? Yeah, see hands kind of going up a little bit. Yes. So what happens when you juggle too many things at once?
You drop something.
Yes.
Get overwhelmed.
You get overwhelmed and you drop things. And what happens when you start dropping things? You get more overwhelmed.
It snowballs.
It does snowball. It's a vicious, vicious cycle. So not only is stress a byproduct of multitasking, but other negative emotions as well. And in fact, all of the negative emotions that we experience in life, all those self-sabotaging thoughts that we have, like, I'm not good enough, or I'll never lose weight, I'll never get that promotion, I couldn't do that. All of those things we tell ourselves that we would never share with somebody else, or maybe we do, but rarely, those bubble up from our left brain. And, fun fact about our left brain, we have between 60 and 70,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of those are negative. 80%. So the majority of our thoughts are negative. Now, in the positive intelligence space, we attach those negative thought patterns and the resulting behavior to what we call saboteur traits. And there are 10 of those, and I'm going to go over those in detail. Now, that's our left brain. Now, our right brain is our happy brain. It's our sage brain. Have you ever had one of those days where everything just seemed to be going amazing? There's a couple heads nodding. You're very focused, you're highly productive, you're having conversations, they're engaging, you physically and emotionally feel absolutely amazing. Well, that's you swimming in your zone of genius, which is your sage brain. And that's where you should be swimming most of the time. Yet when was the last time you felt that way?
Too long ago.
Yeah, it's hard to recall sometimes. And that's where I want you to be most of the time. And you're going to learn the tools of how to get there. Now, our sage has 5 sage powers that help you when challenges arise, because they will. Challenges will always be there. It's how you handle them is what really matters. All right, so this is the fun part. Now, as I go through each of these saboteur traits, as I mentioned, there's 10 of these. I want you to be thinking about which ones resonate with you. And we'll talk about them at the end. So over all of the saboteurs is our judge. Now, our judge not only judges us with those self-deprecating thoughts that I shared earlier, but also judges others. And I know we don't like to think that we judge others, but we do all the time. I'll give you an example. Have you ever been in a grocery store or a Walmart and somebody walks by you and you're thinking to yourself, what are they wearing? Do they even look in the mirror before they left the house? And we might not be proud of those thoughts, but we have them all the time. And we judge people we work with. We certainly judge family members. So that is the judge. Now, overseeing the other 9 saboteurs. Now, each of those saboteurs, the 9 accomplice saboteurs, they all stem from a positive sage perspective, meaning they have a great quality, but when taken to the extreme, it becomes very dysfunctional. I think you'll understand in a minute. So let's start with the controller. So it's important to exercise control, especially at work, to a degree, because if you don't, tasks won't get completed on time. If you're managing teams, they'll just be doing whatever the heck they want whenever they want. Or if any of you have children or have raised children, you know you have to set boundaries with children when they're smaller or they could get into trouble or worse. So control is not a bad thing, but when taken to the extreme, have you ever worked for a micromanager? What is it like to work for a micromanager? How do you feel? Controlled, yes. How does that make you feel?
Like what you do is not good enough. Like you can never get it right.
Right. Like I'm not good enough. I can never do this.
You just have no agency.
Yes, absolutely. No agency. Any other thoughts?
On edge, nervous.
Yes. Yes. Because you feel like they're going to be overly critical? Absolutely. In fact, studies have shown that oftentimes when employees leave organizations is because they have a controller who's a supervisor. Now, the lie that the controller thinks is that I have to be in control. Because if I'm not in control, nothing will get done, and it will not get done correctly. So I have to be in control. And they believe that everybody else wants them to be in control, which is a load of you know what. So that's the controller. Now we have the hyperachiever, which happens to be one of my saboteur traits. So the hyperachiever is very goal-driven, task-oriented, very self-motivated. They can have success, but they're not always happy because they're always focusing on that next thing. So instead of recognizing achievements, it's like, well, I don't have time to sit there and say, oh, great, I did this. Nope, time to move on, time to move on. So again, they can be successful, but they're not always happy. And then we have the restless. So I saw some of you raise your hands with multitasking. So the restless has their hands into a lot of different things. And they're not afraid of trying new things, which is a great quality. It's a great quality. In fact, the restless can also be a fantastic thought leader. They're somebody that you want on a team because they can think out of the box. They have great ideas. But when it comes to execution, they're like, nope, I'm out. Done. So that's the restless. Any of these resonating? Or maybe you know of somebody. And then we have the stickler. Any wannabe perfectionists out there? More heads nodding. So the stickler has amazing attention to detail, which is a fantastic quality. But it gets them into trouble because they have no flexibility. Now, if you are a data analyst or a scientist or a medical doctor, you know, obviously attention to detail is great, but it's in their mind, it's either black or it's white. There's no gray at all, no flexibility. And how do you feel when you're around a stickler who basically said you have to do it this way, has to be this way? Stuck? Any other thoughts? Bored? Stifled? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then there's the pleaser, another one of my saboteur traits. So the pleaser, the great quality of the pleaser is they're very empathetic. What is empathy? Somebody just shout out for me, what is empathy?
Being able to relate to someone else's point of view.
Yes. In particular, what?
Their emotions.
Their emotions, absolutely. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have been in their exact same situation, but you can identify with how they're feeling. And empathy is sitting with somebody and saying, you know what, this sucks, I get it, I'm sorry, I'm here for you. And when you're going through something tough, you want to feel seen, heard, and valued. You don't want somebody trying to fix you and saying, oh, if you do this, this, and this, you'll just get over it. Suck it up, suck it up. That's not helpful. So the pleaser has empathy, but where the pleaser gets into trouble is they're always focusing on others, putting others before themselves. When you're just giving to everybody else and you have nothing left for yourself, how do you feel?
Drained.
What was that?
Drained.
Drained, big time.
Resentful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, another way the pleaser can show up is they want everybody to get along. They want to please everybody, which we know is completely not reality, right? But if a situation is becoming contentious, maybe they're in an environment where you're discussing politics or religious beliefs, and things start to get contentious due to varied, thoughts about that, and then the pleaser would come in and just say, okay, let's just change the subject. Everybody, let's just get along. And, we can't always do that. That's why the pleaser and the avoider, which happens to be another one of my saboteur traits, so now you know me so well, is they pair very nicely together. So the avoider avoids tasks that are difficult, individuals, and circumstances. Procrastinators? Anybody procrastinate ever? Yes. You're probably thinking of all the things that you're procrastinating on right now. Yes. So really, what is procrastination? What do you think it is? It's not laziness, which we often think. It's actually fear of rejection, which is kind of scary when you think about it. But we are fearful that we won't show up as our best selves, or we might hurt somebody's feelings. That's why we avoid certain tasks, because they make us feel uncomfortable and we don't feel that we can do them well. We avoid difficult conversations because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. And then circumstances. If I were to tell you, all right, you have to speak in front of 1,000 people tomorrow without any preparation, what would you do? Panic, right? You think I was hallucinating, right? Exactly. So, that might be an extreme example, but avoiding situations that make you uncomfortable prevents you from growing and developing. I didn't used to like public speaking, honestly. I was terrified of it. In college, it scared the crap out of me. I would literally make myself sick if I had to stand up in front of a classroom and deliver some sort of presentation. So again, it's pushing through and pushing through. Going back to the hypervigilant. Now the hypervigilant's great quality is that they are very self-aware. And self-awareness is a great thing, especially if you suspect danger. That's why first responders, that's why maybe a guide who is taking you on an African safari. It's helpful that these individuals are hypervigilant because there's potential for danger. But the extreme is being around somebody who is always paranoid that something bad is going to happen. Have you ever been around somebody like that? How does that make you feel?
Anxious.
Yes. Absolutely. And you know what we call that? A saboteur contagion. Because their saboteurs, their hypervigilant saboteurs, are contaminating your behavior and making you feel anxious or irritated or whatever emotion is coming up. The victim is also very self-aware, which again is a great quality, but the victim, poor me, my life sucks, everything's miserable. They use that to get attention, and they might get some sympathy at the beginning, but they don't get any empathy because after a while people can't stand to be around them. And then lastly, we have the hyper-rational. And the hyper-rational like the hyperachiever, can be very successful but is not always happy. And this is because the hyperrational is very left brain dominant. They're very task-driven, they're highly intelligent, could be a doctor, an attorney, CPA. They stink at empathy because to them, emotions are messy. And we don't want to go down that path because it prevents me from being productive. And that's why individuals in those fields often struggle with personal relationships. So which ones are coming up for you? I'd love to hear. Which ones are resonating? Just shout it out.
Pleaser.
Pleaser.
Yeah. Stickler and pleaser.
Stickler, pleaser.
Pleaser, avoider.
Pleaser, avoider. Yep. Any others?
All of them.
All of them. I was waiting for somebody to say that.
Every single one of them.
Because you know what? You're right. We all have every single one of these. We don't like to say we're a victim. I mean, we don't, but come on. We played the victim card before to get somebody to be sympathetic about our situation. So we have all of these. It's just some are more dominant than others. So our saboteurs, they motivate us through those negative emotions. And these, again, we'll go into in a minute. Positive emotions is what our sage motivates us by. So negatively, fear, stress, anxiety, shame, blame. Again, all those negative emotions that we have, our saboteurs say you have to feel that way in order to be successful, happy, productive, whatever. Whereas the sage will motivate you through empathy, curiosity, passion, and purpose. Again, going back to that zone of genius that I was talking about earlier, where you want to swim in all the time. Oops. So again, our saboteurs, some may allow you to be successful, but you won't be happy. But you will generate your highest level of success and happiness for your sage. All right, what do you think? Is pain good for you?
Depends.
It depends. Why does it depend? What do you mean?
Sometimes it can cause one to grow, and other times it can break you and go the other direction.
Can?
It's useful.
How is it useful?
It tells you what not to do.
What limits are.
And what your limits are.
Yes, absolutely. So pain, which is a negative emotion, serves a purpose to alert you that something is wrong and needs to change. And if we're paying attention to these emotions, then we can learn how to change that behavior. Now, the problem is, oftentimes, we allow ourselves to become enveloped in that pain or whatever negative emotion that it is. And that is a saboteur hijacking. And that's not what you want. Because the equivalent of putting your hand on a hot stove is having a negative emotion and just letting yourself drown in that negative emotion. And you would never put your hands on a hot burner and just let it fry. Never. You wouldn't. But that's in essence what you're doing. So here's the thing about if you spend more than 1 to 2 seconds in a negative emotion, it prevents you from seeing clearly, responding with empathy, curiosity, laser-focused action. So think, every time you have a negative thought, it's coming from your saboteurs. All right, let's talk about our sage. So our sage, again, is where we house all of our positive emotions, where we're highly productive, we're peaceful, we're calm, we have clear-headed focus, we have creativity, we can see the big picture. And the thing about the sage is the belief is that every circumstance or outcome has a gift and opportunity. I'm going to say that again because that's hard for some people to digest. Every outcome or circumstance can have a gift and opportunity. What do y'all think of that? Do you agree? Why?
I think it's the power of perspective.
Okay, elaborate on that.
Well, I mean, you go one of two ways. Not go the more productive way would be going positive versus negative. So if you choose to view it as an opportunity, it can become an opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a choice. Now, what if you got a cancer diagnosis? What would be the gift and opportunity in that situation? Is there?
I'm not a cancer survivor by any means, so I can't speak to that. But I do feel like the people I do know have gained a community that they might not have had otherwise. So there's relationships that they have that you might not have ever had.
Absolutely. You can gain a community. You can then spend more time focusing on your health and surrounding yourselves with those people that you care about. Now, if you were given a diagnosis that said you're going to be dead in 30 days, it's kind of hard to find a gift and opportunity in that situation. And the sage perspective would say acceptance. You might not like it per se, but you accept it because you can't change it. It is what it is. So that's the sage perspective. All right, so I had mentioned earlier that there are 5 sage powers that can help us when we have challenges. So the first one is the explorer power, and we like to call this the fascinated anthropologist. Exploring without judgment. So I want you to give me an example of a problem that you could potentially walk into one day it's not a great situation. Just throw out. When you come to work, what's a potential issue?
Website's down.
Website's down. That's a fun one, right? Good old technology. It's great. All right, so this is how the explorer would look at a situation like that, especially if you're in technology, probably going, okay, this is not a good thing. So there's 3 components to the explorer. There's what's coming up for me in that situation. So how are you feeling? Are you taking the saboteur road and saying, oh, this is terrible. This is just going to completely destroy our day. I can't get all this stuff done that I need to get done, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, pretty much?
100%.
Okay, all right. I'm glad. We're kind of on that connection level here. I'm glad. That's good. All right. So it's recognizing that and identifying that, okay, so I've got some saboteurs hanging out here. And then others, what's coming up for others in that situation? How are they responding? You know, is their reaction impacting how you react? You know, we talked about that saboteur contagion. Yes? Because if you're saying to everybody, oh, this sucks, it's terrible, nothing good is coming of this, how's that going to make everybody else feel? They're going to start to think the same thing, right? And then the third is circumstances. What about these circumstances can I change? Now, you might not be able to change anything. Or you could. And what might that be? So the purpose of this power is to, again, be a fascinated anthropologist. It's to get curious and think about, okay, how is my behavior impacting the behavior of others and vice versa? And do I need to kind of rethink about how I'm reacting, even though it's not an ideal situation? And then what about those circumstances can I change? Make sense? All right, so the next power is the empathize power. I want you to imagine that you are in the midst of a confrontation. Hopefully it's not between coworkers here, but maybe somebody is just really getting in your face and saying things to you that are disrespectful, or maybe they're using a tone of voice that is not respectful. How do you feel when somebody is just really being abrasive and just not respectful? How does that make you feel? Anger. And how do you want to respond?
Anytime.
Right. It's like, you don't talk to me like that. Don't even go there, and a lot worse. But the thing is when we react through our emotions in a negative way, what happens to the situation? It gets far worse. It escalates. And I would venture to guess that all of us at one time or another have said or done something that we regret. And you'll continue to do it because you're human. And that's the way it is. So in the empathize situation, if somebody is really being disrespectful, our first reaction is obviously just to react. But if we were to look at it from the perspective that, okay, I have certainly said and done things that I wish I hadn't. So I'm going to give this person a little bit of grace and not react, even though I'm not necessarily approving of what they're saying, but I'm not going to react. Now, another way that you can look at it is visualizing what we call the inner child. And what that means is everybody is born inherently good, for the most part. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, at the core, everybody is inherently good. So in this situation, trying to see that, okay, you know what, this person could be having a terrible day. Maybe somebody that they spoke to earlier on just really was disrespectful to them and it set them off, and then it's just a downward spiral. So again, not reacting to the emotion, but understanding why they might be reacting that way. And this conversation is in no way condoning people to treat you like crap. Okay, I just want to tell you that right now. So if somebody in your sphere of influence consistently treats you poorly, that's not acceptable. And that's not what I'm trying to say here. Bill? All right. So the next power is the navigate flash forward power. And I use this power a lot. So do you ever get so stressed out that you can't focus on anything? And oftentimes this is like in the middle of the night. You wake up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep. And you're like, okay, I got to shut my brain off, but I don't know how to do that. So the navigate power is looking at yourself from the version of your older, wiser self. So your older, wiser self can see your entire life before them. Okay? They can see everything that's happened in their life and also what is right before them, what you're ruminating about. What would your older, wiser self tell you about what you're worrying about? What would they say?
It's temporary.
Yes, it's temporary. What else might they say? Don't sweat the small stuff. Exactly. Because we love catastrophizing, don't we? We're really good at doing that. And, all those thoughts, they're fabricated lies just to make us miserable. It's our saboteurs having a party in our brain, and it's not a good party. So the sage perspective, the navigate power again, is basically saying, you know what, don't sweat it. It's not that big of a deal. It will pass. Now, the yes and game. This is a great thing to do if you're ever in a situation where you're facilitating a meeting and you need everybody at that meeting to contribute in some way. So give me an example of a topic of discussion where it's important that everybody in attendance is contributing. Just throw out something. It may not even pertain to work. It could pertain to a family meeting, or maybe you're involved in something outside of work.
Family vacation.
A family vacation, okay? All right, so in the planning of a family vacation, is that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So in a situation like that, let's say you're all together and you're trying to come up with the best family vacation. So what we would do in a situation like that is the first individual would say, okay, this is what I want to do. This I think would be super fun. It would get all of us involved, and this is what I suggest we do. And then you would go to the next family member, and they would say, what I like about that idea is it gets everybody together, and they provide a different solution. And then it goes to the next person, so that everybody has an opportunity to talk. And it's not certain individuals monopolizing the conversation or trying to control what you do on your vacation. Now, people might be sharing ideas that might be kind of silly, and that's okay. The thing is, when you are generating ideas, the purpose is to stay in sage curiosity. It's not to start critiquing and saying, well, that's a dumb idea. You know, why would we do that? It's going to take too much time. We're going to have to drive too far. That's just stupid. No, because that is your saboteur coming into play and being judgmental. So what you would do is everybody would have their time. And then at the end, you'd have, a list of 5 items or whatever. And then you could say, okay, is there anything right now of these items that maybe we can table, maybe isn't really what we want to do? So that could shorten the list. And then you can go into your discussion of what you want to do. So again, it's really getting everybody to contribute in the situation. And then lastly, there's the activate power. And this is preempting the saboteurs. So I want you to imagine that you're in charge of something. Let's say, do you ever have like employee appreciation days, luncheons, anything for employees? Okay, so let's say you're in charge of that. No pressure, right? And let's say the event is on Friday, and you really want it to go well. So you're going to think and preempt what saboteurs might come up. Is it my judge saying, who am I to think that I could possibly carry this off? Or maybe it's the controller or the stickler. And again, it's not giving you permission to go down that self-deprecating path, but it's kind of mentally preparing you for possible challenges so that you can stay in that ease and flow. Make sense? All right. Is there one power that you're identifying more with than the other? One that you could use? Empathize? That's a good one. All right. So we have talked a lot about our brains. Our left brain houses all of our negative thoughts. Those can impact us in not so positive ways, can influence the behavior of others, can prevent us from responding with empathy, clear-headed focus. And then we have our sage, which is our zone of genius, where you want to be swimming most of the time. So I want to go back to that situation where you're being confronted by that individual, okay? And that person's really getting in your face. And you know that you need to respond with empathy, but you're really triggered and you're about ready to strangle that person. So what you could do is utilize what we call a PQ rep. And in essence, what these are micro meditations that take anywhere from 10 to 15 seconds. And what they're doing is they're taking the focus off of that negative emotion so that you can then intercept that saboteur and shift to a positive sage perspective. So if you're having a conversation with somebody and they're really getting in your face, what you could do is look at something on their face really intently. So if they're wearing glasses, notice the shape and color of the frame of their glasses. Or you could really stare intently at their eyes, like the color and shape of the iris of their eyes. You're still listening to what they're saying, but all that negative energy that you feel welling up, it's dissipating. So that when they do stop talking, you can respond with empathy. Make sense? Now, If you're at work, you ever get stressed at work? Ever? Never, right. Okay, so imagine that you're really stressed at work. And that never happens, I know. So you can do a series of PQ reps yourself if you're sitting in your office or if you're going to the bathroom and you got a couple minutes to yourself. And this is how you do it. You focus on one of your senses. And I want all of us to do this right now. So I want you to look at something in front of you. And you could look at an article of clothing that you're wearing. You could stare at, I don't know, something on the screen. But I want you to stare really intently at something right now, like you've never seen it before. And I want you to notice colors, shapes, textures, if it's clothing. Notice tiny details. So that's one thing that you can focus on. You can also focus on what you can hear. Now, obviously, I'm talking, so it could be the sound and inflection of my voice. Or if you're in a quiet space, it might even be the sound of your breath. And just listening with your eyes closed just for 10 to 15 seconds, the sound of your breathing. Maybe it's a passing car, maybe it's a cell phone ringing, somebody talking in another room. And then you could focus on something that you can touch. So I see some people have, cans and cups, whatever. I want you to touch that and feel it as if you were blind and that you had no visual capabilities, and try to describe to yourself what this object is and really pay attention to how it feels. Now, it could be as simple as rubbing two fingertips together, like your index and your thumb together, and noticing the ridges of your fingers. I do that a lot. Especially if I start to feel stressed, you can do that in your pocket. You don't have to go around doing this to people because they're going to think you're a freak. But you can do it, subtly. And again, it's just these simple little micro meditations that doesn't seem like they're doing much, but when you do them in conjunction, can make a huge difference and can escalate or de-escalate those negative emotions. Now, for those of you who struggle with sleep, I'm going to tell you how you can manage sleep or go back to sleep if you wake up in the middle of the night. So I want you to close your eyes, please, and keep your eyes closed until I ask you to open them. And I want you to imagine a big red stop sign. One of those big stop signs, sometimes with the flashing lights that you see at a four-way stop. And I want you to say to yourself, stop. Stop. Next, I want you to focus on your breath. As you inhale, I want you to say to yourself the word so, S-O. When you exhale, I want you to say the word hum, H-U-M. So, hum. So, hum. Now your mind might start to wander, and if that happens, you just envision that big red stop sign again. You say firmly to yourself, stop, stop. And then you resume focusing on the breath. So, hum. So, hum. You can open your eyes. This does work, and this is why it works. Because when you're saying stop, you're self-commanding your brain to stop the mind chatter. That's why just breathing alone doesn't work. It doesn't, because you're not stopping the chatter. And you've got to self-command your brain to stop the chatter. And then when you start breathing, the so and the hum is actually the sound that your lungs make in your deepest restorative sleep. And we call that deep delta sleep. That's a sleep where your muscles rebuild, where your body heals itself. So that is kind of a meditation. Now, I can't tell you how many people I have told this to, I've shared this, and have tried it, and it said, it has changed my life. It works. Now, don't get discouraged if you're really hijacked and you can't go back to sleep right away. It might take a couple minutes. But if you consistently self-command your brain to stop the mind chatter and then resume those breathing exercises, you will go to sleep. And when you get really good at it, you can be asleep in a couple seconds. So, any questions or comments about any of that? Can you see where that might be helpful? Yes? All right. So, did you learn something? Yes, something that maybe could be helpful? All right. What I would really appreciate if you would take, and we have the time, I checked my watch, we have the time, to scan this QR code and take a 2-minute survey. Now, for doing that, I'm going to give you 3 things, possibly 4. So the first thing is you're going to get a link to the saboteur assessment. So you can actually identify what your top saboteurs are. So you have an assessment link. Then you're also getting a free workbook from me, which actually pairs with my best-selling book, From Burnout to Best Life, of which I have 2 copies with me today. So if you are the first person, the first 2 people to finish this, then you will get a copy of my book as well. And the workbook pairs with that. So if you liked what you heard, share what you liked. If you didn't like it, there was something that I could have done better, please put that in there as well. Because this is the only way that I know to really determine if my message is resonating with the audience. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes. And when you're done, raise your hand. And the first 2 people who raise their hand will get my book. And then we have a call to action afterwards. Wow, somebody's speedy. All right. That's awesome. You did that in record time.
I just wanted the free book. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Bless you. Oh, we got our other winner. There you go. Thank you. But I'd like to leave you with this call to action. So we've talked about different PQ reps, right? If you're getting confronted by somebody, and even if you're not really confronted by somebody, if you just want to really pay more attention to what that person is saying, then you could still focus on something that you could see on their face. Then we talked about those different PQ reps that you can engage your sight, what you can hear, touch. And then the exercise of how to go back to sleep. Which of those will you try using to help you reduce stress and other negative emotions in the moment? Breathing. Awesome. Yes?
I always try the one that, I don't remember or maybe it was in the sage side, where you try to see things not in a negative light, but you try to see them in at least a neutral light. Or
Okay.
Which was, I don't know, a session that I learned one time that, like, I'll give an example, like Dwayne just walked out of the room.
Mhm.
So I could look at that in a negative way and say, boy, that was really rude of him. What was he doing? Or I could look at it as, I'm sure he had a good reason for leaving before the session was over. And to give the benefit of the doubt in what the situation is first.
And that's awesome. So you were using the empathize power instead of being judgmental. And then you were also kind of looking at the gift and opportunity in the situation. So that's awesome. I love that. Anybody else? What are you going to try?
I don't know if it counts as one of the PQ reps, but trying to stop yourself from negative self-talking. If you have that negative thought, let it just be the second or two that you have
Yes.
to take information in, not let it continue to.
Absolutely. And you can stop that by doing a PQ rep. But the first point is you have to create awareness that you're having it, right? And once you start paying attention, you're going to think, oh my gosh, I'm hijacked all the time. And you're not, you're just aware. You're just aware. So that's awesome. Yep, that 1 to 2 second alert. Anybody else? All right, we've got 5 minutes. I want to do one other type of PQ rep. So I want you to close your eyes again. I know, and you're going to go to sleep. This one, you might go to sleep. So this is a deeper relaxation technique. And close your eyes. I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for 3 seconds. And exhale slowly through your mouth. Take another deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for 3 seconds. And exhale slowly through your mouth. Now I want you to notice if you're holding any tension in your body at all. Are your shoulders tight? Are they up around your ears? I want you to just roll your shoulders backwards. Slowly. Just slowly roll them backwards. Just notice that sensation and how that feels. And if your neck feels tight and you're feeling tension in the back of your neck, I want you to slowly roll your head around. And when you reach, like your shoulder, take the hand, your opposite hand, and gently push your head towards your shoulder. Just gently. And feel that stretch. And then continue rolling your head around to the other shoulder. Take your other hand and gently press your head in the other direction and feel the stretch in your neck. Now I want you to notice how your body feels occupying your seat. Where does the seat of the chair, where is it resting against your legs? Where is the back of your chair reaching your back? Just notice those touch points. And then notice your feet on the floor. I want you to wiggle your toes. Wiggle all your toes. Just feel your toes, the sensation of wiggling all of your toes. I know it may seem weird, but just wiggle your toes. And then take another deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for 3 seconds. And then exhale slowly through your mouth. You can open your eyes. So I don't see that anybody fell asleep, but that's a very short variation of what you can do to just relax yourself if you're by yourself. Now, obviously, if you're with a group of people, you can't necessarily say, excuse me, I'm going to go do this in the closet or in the bathroom. But it is something that you can do. And yeah, when you're going to the bathroom, seriously, if you're just having one of those days when you're sitting there, do some of these. Absolutely. Any other comments? All right, well, y'all have been an amazing audience. Thank you so much. Hopefully you learned something. And cheers to your mental fitness. Have a great rest of your day.